You need to sign these papers tonight, Sophia. I'm done waiting for you to come to your senses. Ethan's voice was calm, but it carried that edge he used when he'd already decided how the night would end. Your sister called me earlier. She said you've been spiraling again and she's worried too. This isn't about control, it's about keeping you safe before you make another mistake you can't fix. If you keep fighting me on this, we're going to have to bring in someone who can make the decisions for you. Hi, my name is Sophia Reynolds. I am 29 years old. I stood in the kitchen of our house, in the Charlotte suburbs, with my arms crossed so tightly my shoulders ached. Ethan had come home from work, tossed his keys on the counter, and laid a thick manila folder right in front of me like it was a peace offering. Inside were pages I hadn't asked for power of attorney forms, something about medical directives, and a letter from a doctor I'd never met. He kept his hand on the folder fingers, drumming once like he was already impatient with my silence. I looked at the top page. My name was typed neatly across the signature line. The date was today's date. He hadn't even tried to hide how prepared he was. Ethan, I told you yesterday I needed time to read everything I said. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. You can't just drop this on me the second you walk in the door. He let out a short laugh that didn't reach his eyes. Time you've had weeks. Every time I bring it up, you change the subject or say you're too tired. Lily thinks you're avoiding it on purpose. My younger sister's name landed like a stone in my stomach. Lily had been calling more, lately always with that soft, concerned voice she used when she wanted something. Last week, she'd asked if I was doing okay emotionally after the thing with Grandma Helen's old papers. I'd told her I was fine. Apparently, that answer hadn't been good enough. I reached for the folder anyway, just to prove I wasn't afraid of it. Ethan didn't move his hand. For a second, our fingers brushed, and he pulled back like I'd burned him. Don't touch it until you're ready to sign, he said. I already talked to Derek about it. He said if we file everything together, it'll be smoother for both of us. Derek Shaw, Ethan's co-worker from the real estate office. The one who always laughed a little too loud at Ethan's jokes and never quite looked at me when I was in the room. I hadn't known Derek was involved in our personal paperwork. The fact that Ethan had brought him into this made my chest feel tight. I took a step back from the counter. You discuss my medical decisions with your co-worker. He's not just a co-worker. He's been through this with his own family. He gets it. Ethan's tone shifted into that patient, reasonable register he used when he thought I was being difficult. Sophia, you've been forgetting things. You left the stove on last month. You missed your dentist appointment twice. Lily said you sounded scattered on the phone last Sunday. We're not attacking you. We're trying to help before something worse happens. The words hit in quick succession, each one chosen to land exactly where I was already unsure of myself. I had left the stove on once. I had missed the dentist, but I'd also been working extra hours at the marketing firm downtown because my boss was out on maternity leave and someone had to cover the campaigns. I'd told Ethan that. He'd nodded like he understood, and then brought it up later as proof I was overwhelmed. I opened my mouth to answer, but the doorbell rang before I could. Ethan didn't look surprised. He walked to the front door like he'd been expecting someone. When he came back, Lily was behind him carrying a tote bag and wearing the same worried expression she'd had at Grandma Helen's funeral 3 months ago. Lily set the bag on the kitchen table and gave me a quick hug that felt more like a check-in than affection. Hey, Ethan said you might need some support tonight. I brought the photo albums from Mom's storage unit like you asked last week. I hadn't asked for the albums. I'd mentioned once that I wanted to go through Grandma Helen's old things eventually. Lily had turned it into a plan without me. She glanced at the folder on the counter. Is that the paperwork good? We can all look at it together. Ethan nodded, like this had been the plan all along. Lily read through it already. She thinks it's fair. I felt the floor tilt a little under me. They had already talked about this without me. They had already decided what fair looked like for my life. I walked over to the table and pulled out a chair, mostly so I wouldn't keep standing there like I was under review. Lily sat across from me and started unpacking the tote old photo albums, a shoebox of letters, and at the bottom, a small leather-bound journal I recognized from Grandma Helen's house. The cover was faded green with gold lettering that had mostly worn away. I hadn't seen it since the week after the funeral, when we were cleaning out her things. Lily pushed the journal toward me. Mum said Grandma wanted you to have this. She wrote in it a lot in the last few years. Maybe reading it will help you understand why we're all worried. Ethan stayed standing near the counter, arms folded. We're not asking you to give up anything, Sophia. We're asking you to let us share the load. Sign the papers, and we can all stop walking on eggshells. I opened the journal with fingers that felt numb. The first few pages were ordinary grocery lists, notes about the weather, reminders about doctor appointments. Then I turned to a page dated almost 2 years ago. Grandma Helen's handwriting was smaller there, tighter, like she'd been pressing harder. The words were addressed to no one in particular, but they felt like they were meant for me. If anyone ever tells you that you're too emotional to make your own choices, remember this. They're not protecting you. They're protecting the version of you that's easier to manage. I watched it happen to your mother. I won't watch it happen to you. My breath caught. I read the sentence twice. Grandma Helen had never said anything like that out loud when she was alive. She'd been the quiet one at family gatherings, the one who listened more than she spoke. But here it was, in ink written in her careful cursive. I looked up. Lily was watching me with that same soft concern. Ethan had moved closer to the table. See, he said quietly. Even your grandmother knew you needed help sometimes. This is what we're trying to do. He reached for the journal like he was going to take it from me. I closed it before his fingers touched the cover. The room went very still. Lily shifted in her chair. Sophia, you're shaking. Maybe we should call someone. Ethan, did you talk to that doctor friend of yours? Ethan nodded once. He said he could come by tomorrow if we need an evaluation, just to be safe. The words landed like a second folder on the table. They already had a doctor ready. They already had a plan for what would happen if I kept refusing. I stood up so fast the chair scraped loud against the tile. Neither of them moved. Lily's eyes went wide for a second before the concerned expression slid back into place. Ethan just looked tired, like I was the one making this harder than it had to be. I picked up the journal and held it against my chest. The leather felt warm from my hands. I'm not signing anything tonight, I said. My voice didn't shake, but it felt like it wanted to. And I'm not talking to any doctor you found. Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced at Lily, and something passed between them that I wasn't supposed to see. Then he looked back at me and smiled the small, controlled smile he used when he thought the conversation was almost over. We'll see how you feel in the morning, he said. Lily's staying over. We can all sit down again when you've had some rest. He turned and walked toward the hallway, like the decision had already been made. Lily stayed at the table watching me with eyes that looked almost sorry. I stood there holding Grandma Helen's journal, feeling the weight of the words inside it and the weight of the two people who were already planning what came next. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out without thinking. A text from Rachel, my friend from the marketing firm. Rachel, hey, you okay? You left work early today and didn't answer my call. Want to grab coffee tomorrow? I stared at the screen. For 1 second I thought about typing back, no, I'm not okay. They're trying to take everything. But I didn't. I just locked the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. Ethan Ethan's voice drifted from the hallway. He was already on the phone with someone. Yeah, she's being difficult again. Can you have the papers ready by Friday, just in case I didn't hear the rest? I was already walking toward the back door, journal still pressed to my chest, trying to remember how to breathe without making a sound. Outside, the summer air in the Charlotte suburb felt thick and quiet. The streetlights had just come on. Somewhere down the block, a neighbour's sprinklers clicked on with their steady, rhythmic hiss. I sat on the back step and opened the journal again with shaking hands. I needed to find the next page. I needed to know what else Grandma Helen had written before anyone else decided what was best for me. The next line was dated 3 weeks before she died. Sophia, if you're reading this, it means they've started. Don't let them tell you it's love. Love doesn't come with paperwork, and doctors, you didn't choose. I closed the journal slowly. Inside the house, I could hear Lily's voice now, too low and steady, talking to Ethan like they were already on the same team. I stayed on the step, the journal warm against my ribs, and wondered how long I had before they came looking for me. If you've ever watched the people closest to you start treating your no like it was just a matter of time before you said yes, drop a okay below. I need to know this part hits home for someone else too. I stayed on the back step with Grandma Helen's journal open on my lap long after the voices inside the house grew quieter. The summer air in our Charlotte suburb felt heavy, but I barely noticed. My eyes kept moving over the same lines again and again, the ones that felt like they had been written for this exact night. When I finally stood up, my legs were stiff. I slipped the journal under my arm and went back inside through the kitchen door. Ethan and Lily were still at the table. The folder with the power of attorney papers sat between them like a third person in the room. Ethan looked up first. There you are. We were starting to think you'd decided to sleep outside. Lily gave me a small, tired smile. Come sit. We saved you some of the coffee I made. I didn't sit. I stayed near the door, the journal pressed against my side. I read more of Grandma Helen's writing. Lily's smile faltered for half a second before she fixed it. That's good. She always said, you were the one who should have it. Ethan leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. And did it magically explain why you're making this so difficult? I opened the journal to the page I had marked with my finger and read out loud, my voice steadier than I felt. I spoke with Ethan today. He seems kind, but I see the same look in his eyes that your grandfather had. Keep the property in your name only. Don't let them tell you it's selfish. The kitchen went quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Ethan's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes tightened. Lily was the first to speak. Sophia Grandma was 87 and on a lot of medication at the end. You can't take one confused entry and turn it into some conspiracy. It's not just one entry, I said. I turned the page. There are 3 more like it. She wrote about Mum and how Grandpa tried to get her to sign things over too. She said the pattern always starts with, "We're just worried about you." Ethan stood up slowly. He walked around the table until he was closer to me, but he didn't reach for the journal this time. Sophia, your grandmother was a sweet woman, but she didn't understand modern life. She thought keeping everything separate was strength. It's not. It's isolation. That little rental house she left you, it's sitting empty, costing money in taxes and upkeep. If we put it under joint control, we can actually do something with it. Sell it, invest the money, build something real, instead of letting it rot because you're too sentimental to make a decision. My stomach dropped. He already knew the exact details of the property. He had already looked into it. The journal hadn't been the first time he'd heard about it. You talked to her about this before she died, I said. It wasn't a question. Ethan didn't deny it. He just shrugged one shoulder. She brought it up at the hospital. I listened. That's what family does. Lily stood too moving to stand beside him like they had practiced this. Sophia, we're not the bad guys here. That property is part of the family now that you're married. Keeping it separate just creates problems when something happens to you. What if you get sick? What if you have another one of your episodes and can't handle things? We need to be able to step in without fighting the bank or the courts for months. The word episodes landed like a slap. I had told Lily once in confidence about the panic attack I had after Grandma Helen's funeral. I had trusted her with it. Now she was using it like evidence. I closed the journal and held it tighter. You already called a doctor. You already talked to Derek about the papers. You already looked into the rental house. How long have the two of you been planning this? Ethan's voice stayed calm, almost gentle. We've been talking for a few weeks, ever since you started missing work and forgetting things. Lily reached out to me first because she was scared for you. We didn't want to overwhelm you. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out without looking away from them. A text from Rachel. Rachel's still thinking about you. If you need to talk, I'm up late. I started typing back before I could second guess it. May, can I come over? Things are really bad here. I hit send and slipped the phone back into my pocket before Ethan could see the screen. My heart was beating so hard I was sure they could hear it. Lily took a small step forward. Who was that Rachel from work? I said. She's just checking in. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. You don't need to drag your co-workers into our marriage, Sophia. This is private. It stopped being private the second you brought Derek into it, I said. The phone buzzed again. I didn't pull it out this time, but I felt the vibration against my leg like a lifeline. Ethan sighed and ran a hand over his face. Look, the doctor I mentioned earlier, his name is Dr. Patel. He's willing to come by in the morning just to talk. No commitment. If he thinks you're fine, we drop the whole thing. But if he sees what we're seeing, we move forward with the paperwork. That's fair, right? Lily nodded. Mum and Dad are coming over too. They want to be here for you. Dad already said he agrees with Ethan about the property. He thinks it's the responsible thing. My father, my mother. They were already on the same side. The family I had grown up with was lining up on one side of the kitchen table, and I was standing alone on the other. I felt something inside me shift small but sharp. The fear was still there, but under it was something harder starting to form. I'm not letting a doctor you pick decide if I'm allowed to manage my own life, I said, and I'm not signing anything that gives you control over Grandma Helen's house. Ethan's calm finally cracked. His voice dropped lower the way it did when he was done negotiating. Then we do it the other way. The papers are all ready with Brian at the firm. He can file the petition for temporary conservatorship on Monday if we need to. It'll be public record. Everyone at the reunion this weekend will know why we had to step in. Is that what you want? To make your parents explain to the whole family why their daughter can't take care of herself? The reunion. They were already using it as a weapon. 2 days from now, aunts and uncles and cousins would be at my parents' house in the same suburb, and Ethan and Lily had already decided how the story would be told. My phone buzzed a third time. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I pulled it out. Rachel, my door's open. Come now if you need to. No questions. I looked at Ethan and Lily standing together across from me. The folder was still on the table. The journal was heavy in my hands. I turned and walked toward the bedroom without answering either of them. I heard Lily call my name, but I didn't stop. In the bedroom, I grabbed an overnight bag from the closet and started putting clothes in it with shaking hands. The journal went on top. Ethan appeared in the doorway. He didn't come in. He just stood there, one hand on the frame. Sophia, don't do this. You're going to regret running away from the people who are trying to help you. I zipped the bag and slung it over my shoulder. My keys were still in my pocket. I had left them there earlier when I came home from work. I'm not running away, I said. I'm going somewhere I can think, without being told I'm crazy for wanting to keep what's mine. He stepped aside when I walked past him. Lily was in the hallway now too, her arms wrapped around herself like she was cold. I didn't look back as I opened the front door. The night air outside felt cooler than it had on the back step. My car was in the driveway. I got in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the quiet street. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan standing in the doorway, phone to his ear. He was already calling someone. I drove 2 blocks before I pulled over and texted Rachel again. Me, on my way. Thank you. Then I opened the journal one more time under the dome light and found the last entry Grandma Helen had written, the one dated 2 days before she went into the hospital. If they come for the house, let them have the fight in the open. Secrets only protect the ones who want to keep you small. I closed it, turned off the light, and drove toward Rachel's apartment with both hands tight on the wheel. Behind me in the house, I had just left my husband, and my sister were already deciding what story they would tell everyone at the reunion. I pulled into the parking lot of Rachel's apartment complex just after 10 o'clock. The light in her second-floor window was still on. I sat in the car for a minute, with the engine off the journal on the passenger seat, trying to steady my breathing before I went inside. Rachel opened the door before I could knock twice. She took one look at my face and the bag over my shoulder and stepped aside without asking questions. Her living room was small and warm, with a half-finished cup of tea on the coffee table and her laptop open to some work she had clearly abandoned when I texted. You can stay as long as you need, she said simply. The guest room is made up. I'll make more tea. I sat on her couch and told her everything. The words came out in a rush. At first, then slower, like I was afraid if I stopped, I would start crying and not be able to finish. Rachel listened without interrupting, only nodding when I showed her the pages from Grandma Helen's journal. When I got to the part about Ethan already talking to the lawyer and planning to file for conservatorship, her expression hardened. That's not love, Sophia, she said quietly. That's strategy. I stayed on her couch until almost 2 a.m, reading the rest of the journal under the soft lamplight. Grandma Helen had written more than I realized. There were entries about my mother's marriage, about how my grandfather had slowly taken over decisions until my mother stopped trusting her own judgment. The last entry, the one I kept coming back to, was short. Love that requires you to disappear is not love. It is management. Rachel eventually went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I sat at her kitchen table with my phone and searched for family law attorneys in Charlotte. Brian Torres's name came up with good reviews for handling disputes over separate property and contested documents. I sent an email at 3 a.m. explaining the situation in broad terms and asking if he could meet me the next day. I didn't expect an answer until morning, but he replied at 6. We met at his office downtown at 9. Brian was in his 50s, calm and direct. He read the power of attorney papers Ethan had tried to get me to sign and the relevant pages from the journal without changing expression. You don't have to sign anything, he said. The property your grandmother left you is in your name only. Your husband has no legal claim to it unless you give him one. As for the conservatorship petition, they would need clear medical evidence of incapacity. From what you've described, they don't have that. They have opinions and pressure. I asked him what would happen if I refused. They might still try to file, he said, but you can fight it. And you should document everything. The journal helps. The fact that they coordinated without your knowledge helps. If you want to separate your finances and your living situation, we can start that process too. I left his office with a folder of my own and a clearer head than I had had in weeks. I drove back to Rachel's and called my mother. The conversation was short and painful. Ethan and Lily are worried sick, my mother said. Your father thinks you're overreacting because of the stress at work. Just come home and talk this through before the reunion this weekend. Everyone will be there. Don't make it awkward for the whole family. I told her I wasn't coming home. She hung up after telling me I was being selfish. That afternoon, Ethan showed up at Rachel's door. Lily was with him. Rachel let them in but stayed in the kitchen close enough to hear if I needed her. Ethan looked tired and angry at the same time. You can't just disappear, Sophia. We have responsibilities. The reunion is in 2 days. Your parents are expecting us. I'm not going, I said. I was sitting on Rachel's couch with the journal on my lap. And I'm not signing the papers. Lily stepped forward. You're making this so much bigger than it has to be. We can still fix this before it gets ugly. Brian already has the documents ready. Dad said he'll support whatever we decide. I opened the journal to the page where Grandma Helen had written about Ethan and read it out loud again. When I finished, Ethan's face had gone still. You're twisting her words, he said. She was old and scared of losing control. No, I said. She was clear. And I'm choosing to believe her instead of the version of me you and Lily and my parents have decided is broken. Lily's voice cracked a little. We did this because we love you. Love doesn't come with a doctor you pre-selected and a lawyer already on standby, I said. Love doesn't threaten to make my private struggles public at a family reunion, so I'll give in. Ethan took a step closer. His voice dropped into that low, controlled tone again. If you walk away from this, you're walking away from all of us. Your parents won't understand. Your sister won't either. You'll be alone. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. Then I'll be alone with the truth, instead of surrounded by people who need me to be smaller than I am. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned and walked out. Lily followed him after one last look that held something between anger and sadness. The door closed behind them. Rachel came out of the kitchen and sat beside me without saying anything. I let myself cry, then quiet at first, then harder until my chest hurt and my throat was raw. It wasn't just about Ethan or Lily. It was about the version of my family I had believed in for 29 years, cracking open and showing me it had never been what I thought. The everyday calls from my mother, the holiday plans with my sister, the sense that I belonged somewhere. Even when things were hard, all of it had been conditional on me staying the person they needed me to be. I stayed with Rachel for the rest of the week. On Saturday morning, the day of the reunion, I drove to my parents' house anyway. Not to stay, not to sign anything. I went because I needed to say what I had to say in front of everyone instead of letting them control the story. The backyard was already set up with tables and folding chairs when I arrived. My mother saw me first and hurried over her face, tight with worry that quickly turned to frustration when she saw I was alone. Ethan's inside with your father, she said. You should go talk to them before everyone else gets here. I'm not here to talk to Ethan, I said. I'm here to talk to all of you. Uncle David was already there, sitting at one of the tables with a glass of iced tea. He had always been the quiet one at family events, the one who listened more than he spoke. He looked up when I walked over and gave me a small nod, nothing more. I waited until most of the family had arrived. Then I stood near the food table with the journal in my hands and spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Ethan and Lily and my parents have been trying to get me to sign papers that would give them control over my decisions and over the house Grandma Helen left me. They told me it was for my own good. They brought in a doctor and a lawyer without asking me. They planned to use this reunion to pressure me into it. The backyard went quiet. My mother started to say something, but my father put a hand on her arm. I opened the journal and read the entries out loud. When I finished the one about Ethan, I looked straight at him where he stood near the back door with Lily. Grandma Helen saw this coming before any of us did, I said. I'm choosing to believe her. Ethan's face flushed. Lily looked down at the ground. My mother's eyes filled with tears that didn't fall. Then Uncle David stood up. His voice was low but clear. I remember your grandmother saying something like that to me a few years ago, he said. She was worried about the way things were heading with the younger generation. She said some people confuse protection with ownership. I didn't understand what she meant then. I think I do now. He looked at me, then at Ethan and Lily. If Sophia says no, that should be the end of it. Family doesn't force signatures and doctors on each other. The silence that followed was heavy. My father cleared his throat but didn't speak. My mother turned and went inside. Lily followed her. Ethan stayed where he was for another minute, then walked to his car and drove away without looking back. I didn't stay for the food or the conversations. I got in my car and drove back to Rachel's. Halfway there, the tears came again, harder this time. I had to pull over in a grocery store parking lot because I couldn't see the road. I sat there with the engine running and cried until my head hurt and my chest felt hollow. I had lost the everyday version of my family, the calls that used to come without agenda, the automatic assumption that I belonged at every table, the easy comfort of being someone's daughter and sister, without having to prove I was capable of managing my own life. That version was gone, and I had been the one to end it. But I still had the journal. I still had the small house. Grandma Helen had left only to me. I still had the clarity that came from choosing the truth over the story they needed me to believe. 2 weeks later, I moved into a small apartment near work. Brian helped me separate my finances and put the rental property into a trust that Ethan couldn't touch. I blocked Ethan's number after he sent one final text calling me selfish and unstable. I told my parents I needed space and that I would reach out when I was ready. They didn't argue. Lily sent one message saying she hoped I would come to my senses. I didn't answer. Uncle David texted me once. He said he was sorry for not speaking up sooner, and that if I ever needed someone to listen without trying to fix me, he was there. I thanked him and told him I might take him up on that someday, but not yet. Some nights I still cry in the quiet of my new apartment. The loss sits in my chest like a bruise that hasn't faded. I miss the version of family I thought I had. I miss the easy belonging. But I don't miss the constant low-level fear that I was one mistake away from being declared incapable. I keep Grandma Helen's journal on my nightstand. Sometimes I open it to the last page and read her words again. Love that requires you to disappear is not love. It is management. I am learning slowly how to live without disappearing. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping yourself whole, what would you have done?